What's up, you guys? Dana White's Contender Series Week 7 coming at you guys now. Very intrigued with the main event. We got a big-time heavyweight matchup between two undefeated prospects, two guys that bring the fight. I think both these guys very realistically can be fighting in the UFC for some time to come. Other than that, maybe I'm being a little harsh on the other four fights, but I wasn't overly impressed as I was breaking down tape on these fighters. Maybe one or two guys are decent and have some potential. The other ones, we'll talk about it all here. In the first fight, we have two Brazilian flyweight prospects, both with the last name Silva. Although, when you go to watch tape on Igor da Silva on YouTube, for whatever reason, he's another one of those Brazilian fighters that has a different last name and a bunch of his fight footage. So it kind of makes you work there and do your research to make sure it's him. If anybody can shed some light on that, why are these Brazilian fighters, why do so many of them have different last names and early on in their careers? I don't understand that. I doubt he's getting married at 20 years old and taking on some female's last name. If anybody can shed some light on that. Again, two Silvas. Now, Johanta Silva also fighting out of Italy, but I do believe he's of Brazilian descent. I don't know. I think maybe he spent some time in Italy, also training under the American top team banner in Rome, but he also has put in some time under Nova União. So he's 8-1 as a pro. He's a very undersized flyweight fighter from what I'm seeing here. He's going to have about a 2-inch height disadvantage. He's also a fighter that has weighed in under the flyweight limit. I found that kind of interesting, right? When you're able to weigh in at 125 pounds, 126 pounds, and you're coming in under that weight limit, that's kind of interesting as far as I'm concerned. On the other hand, you got the youngster Igor da Silva. I've been pretty impressed from the tape that I'm watching on him, especially when you take into consideration that he's only 20 years old. Hasn't been so active as of recently. I have no problem with that. His last fight was a year ago. When you're only 20 years old, I have no problem with the long layoffs, especially when you're expecting him to be in the gym nonstop. A young fighter like that, I'm sure he's in the gym learning new tactics, new tricks in the gym, and especially training at a Shuto box, but he's not under Shuto box Diego Lima. It's under Shuto box João Emilio. But in general, man, the whole Shuto box camp, they're really doing some things over there. Very aggressive. Igor da Silva, a very well-rounded fighter from what I've pulled up on him. A good striker. Most importantly, where I think that he has an edge in this fight is the ground game. Johanta Silva, I have some question marks about his takedown defense. Igor da Silva is a fighter that could definitely get on top of you and rain down some nasty ground and pound. I like the elbows that he throws inside his opponent's guard. Again, on the feet, he's polished up as well. And he's a fight finisher. He's without a doubt a fight finisher, right? He's 7-0 as a pro, and all 7 of those victories have come by way of stoppage. 3 via KO, 4 via submission. I think that the submission is very live in a spot like this. I understand that his opponent has only been he's only taken 1 loss, and that loss was via a split decision. But I still think that he has shown some holes in his game down on the ground. So wouldn't be surprised if Igor pulls off the sub. And you take a look at the level of competition. Both these fighters, they're young, not really any big-time decorated opponents that they've gone out there and taken out. You could mention the Stipe Bercic finish that Johanta is coming off, obviously the biggest victory of his career in the 3rd round there. But Bercic, when you take a look at him, you dive a little bit deeper into him. He's 11-3, but those losses, now he's taken 4 losses. A lot of them have came as of recently, so he's not a fighter that's been shy of going out there and getting defeated. And I think Igor da Silva will be the more well-rounded fighter here. I definitely feel more confident picking him to get the job done here. I think he's the more promising prospect. I think he'll have a size advantage. I think he'll be better anywhere this fight goes. If you want to worry about one aspect, I would say that Johanta Silva is a pretty dangerous striker, has some nasty leg kicks, and if he can keep this fight standing, he could potentially be live there. But I like Igor. I do like Igor. We take a look at BetMGM. He opened up as a -210. That line is flat. He's still a -210, so a 2-1 favorite, essentially. We see him as high as a -230 on FanDuel. And, fights taking place tomorrow, so not a crazy amount of line movement, really. He opened up as a -210 on DraftKings. He's now -230, so the line's somewhat trending towards Igor da Silva's way. It's kind of what I would expect. Another thing you need to take note, there's not an overwhelming amount of footage on Johanta Silva. Also, Johanta's been a little bit more active. He's a little bit more of a physically mature fighter. I still like Igor da Silva. I think he's the better fighter here. Anything right around -210 and below. It's not really a bad line. I don't mind it, but if you start getting up to the -250 range on a young fighter like Igor, and there's some question marks here with the fight footage we could pull up and whatnot, you might be being a little risky out there. So I would caution you there. But I like Igor da Silva to use his skills down in the mat, potentially get a stoppage using some ground and pound, setting up a choke, setting up some type of submission, or really just taking over this fight with ground and pound down in the mat. Over to the lightweight division, we have Kenan Khrushchevsky taking on Dylan Mantello. It's an interesting name for a Brazilian fighter right there. Khrushchevsky. Seems almost like a Polish name or some type of name. So it's kind of interesting. Kenan, I've enjoyed breaking down tape on him. Definitely is not the most polished fighter, but he's a fighter that brings it. He's very aggressive. And he's a fun fighter to watch. I think he's a well-rounded fighter, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a fighter that's very aggressive on the feet, throws very heavy leg kicks. He's willing to push the pace on his opponents. I like that. I think if you're looking to take him in a spot like this, you know he's going to go out there and look to deliver. Now, there's potential that he's going to get hit with a counter shot or something like that in a matchup like this, but I think he definitely has the edge as far as his output in this matchup. He's going to be much more active. He's going to be the aggressor here, and he's a very well-rounded fighter. Now, the opposition here, Dylan Mantello, this is a fighter that is fighting out of Serra-Longo, MMA. This is a fighter that is 7-2 as a pro. You take note that one of his losses against John Ramirez, he got redemption on him just about, it was about a year after he took that first loss, and he lost the decision to John Ramirez, and then he went out there and finished him with a body kick. So I do like the fact that he got redemption in one of his losses. His other loss was a loss against Archie Colgan, a respectable fighter. And I think that Dylan actually is a decent fighter here. I think he's a good fighter. He's a much more patient fighter on the feet, but I would say that he's maybe a little bit more of an accurate striker. If I see one of these fighters landing like a big shot, a big counter shot, I think it's going to be Dylan Mantello that's going to land that counter shot as Kanan's coming in and being the aggressor. Okay, so I think that this is a very close fight. We're going to get to the betting line here in a second. I think this is a fight that can go either way, essentially. But when I sit here and I have to pick one of these guys to win the fight, I feel more comfortable taking the fighter that's just a little bit more of a dog, and not an underdog. I'm not talking about an underdog. I'm talking about a dog in the fact that he's going to come forward. He's going to look to throw down and just be very active. I think that style favors him on a show like this. You know, it's very favorable on this type of show. And I worry a little bit about Dylan kind of looking for that counter strike and then maybe not getting it and, just getting outpointed, just being outvolumed. So, yes, I will be taking Kenan to win the fight. He's 14-1 as a pro, 32 years old. He's very much just about in the prime of his career. I mean, I would say he'll be in the prime of his career here in a year or two. If he's able to get in the UFC, get some real experience under his belt, I mean, he'll be the most dangerous version of himself very, very shortly here. Not to say that Mantello's very green or whatnot, too, because he doesn't have as much pro experience does Mantello, but he's also not a spring chicken, as I like to say. He's 30 years old, but has almost half the amount of pro experience. But again, Kenan coming off a lot of finishes as well. Guillotine chokes, knockouts. Like I said, a very well-rounded fighter. He'll go out there and get the job done in a couple different ways. Was knocked out in that lone loss against Alexei Mantakevia, who was a 12-5 fighter. Again, I talked about how at times Kenan could be a little bit aggressive. I think there is a possibility that we see him hit with the counter shot here. But like I said, all in all, I feel more confident taking him. Let's go take a look at the betting line and see what we're talking about here. This is what I'm talking about here. So Kenan Khrushchevsky is a -250 favorite on BetMGM right now. He's a big favorite all across the board. You take a look at all books. I don't feel comfortable in that at all. I think that Dylan Mantello is a potentially live dog here. In fact, he is a live dog. If you're looking for value, the value, in my opinion, is on Mantello. You can get 2-1 odds on him on BetMGM. He's a +200. I think you have to say that the value's there. I could see him maybe slowing the pace of this fight down and landing some crisp counter shots. And he's a fighter. Also, when you take a look at them physically, Mantello is the fighter that's going to be more rangy. He's a longer fighter. He's taller. He'll have a 2-inch height advantage. You watch him on tape, you see he's like kind of a wiry, long guy, and he's technically sound with his striking, okay? But just keep an eye on Khrushchevsky just being the more aggressive fighter, working the leg kicks, mixing things up, and just being a dog out there. So I will edge him to win this fight. Value on Dylan Mantello. Over to the women's strawweight division, we have Talita Al-Ansar taking on Stephanie Luciano. Stephanie Luciano, let's talk about her for a second here. She has the nickname Rondinha, of course, after Ronda Rousey. And, I find that interesting when you have never had one submission as a pro thus far, but you get that nickname. I know she has like that judo background and whatnot, but you better go out there and pull off at least one armbar before you get a nickname like that. When I watch tape on her, I would say maybe her main strength is that she's kind of scrappy and is aggressive on the feet with her striking, and something that really Ronda Rousey wasn't really known for. Her opponent, Talita Al-Ansar, this is a fighter that is, she comes from the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene. She's very decorated over there. I know that she's won some champions over there. I believe she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Definitely her strength is going to be her grappling and her jiu-jitsu, and that will be her strength in this matchup as well. I do believe she has an edge there. Now, I do have a little bit, I have some questions in regards to her game, right? I was not that impressed with her last fight. She had a fight over in LFA against Kelsey Arneson, who was 2-2 at the time. She's now 2-3. I was a little discouraged at the fact that as I dove into that fight that she wasn't able to get a submission victory in a spot like that against a fighter that I'm not high on, to say the least. I believe that Stephanie Luciano is a little bit more of a promising fighter than a Kelsey Arneson. So, that kind of worries me in the sense that if Talita doesn't go out there and get the submission, I think she could definitely lose this fight. If she doesn't go out there and pull the sub off, I think there's a very, very likelihood that she loses a decision because her opponent, Stephanie is a very aggressive fighter, and I could see her just being more active and just making things ugly in there. So that being said, one thing I didn't like as far as a stylistic matchup for Stephanie Luciano is that she seems to be very willing to engage in those types of scrambles as well. She'll strike, but she'll also mix things up and go down to the mat. She's confident in her grappling, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a problem for her because I think when this fight does go down to the mat, you're going to see Al-Ansar use those jiu-jitsu skills to... I'm going to say she gets a rear naked choke. I'm going to say you see some scrambles going on. I'm going to say Al-Ansar gets the back and pulls off a rear naked choke. You take a look at her 4 pro victories. I believe all 3 of her first pro victories were via rear naked choke besides that last decision victory. And all 3 of those rear naked chokes coming over in Titan FC. You guys know I like Titan FC. I've attended quite a few of those events. And, I could see something like that happening. So, again, just Stephanie Luciano, a little bit reckless and a little wild in there. And I think that the jiu-jitsu champion can secure a submission here. So let's take a look at the betting line. Over at Bet Rivers, Talita Al-Ansar is a -305. Not crazy about this line. Not really crazy about any line I see next to her. Won't be targeting her personally. I think that Stephanie Luciano is potentially live here. She's as high as a +240, now a +230 on BetMGM. And I think the value is on Stephanie Luciano, but I'm not going to sit here on the mic and tell you I think Stephanie Luciano is going to win this fight. Like I said, she's sloppy. Talita Al-Ansar is a very professional fighter when you dive into her and see the people that she surrounds herself with. Obviously, also being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion, you understand that she's going to take that work ethic and that professionalism right into the sport of MMA, and she's going to figure things out. So I got Talita Al-Ansar getting the submission, but if she doesn't have success getting this fight down to the mat, and if Stephanie fights an intelligent fight and really looks to keep this fight standing, you're going to be very frustrated with that ticket in your hand, or if you have Talita mixed up in a parlay. I'll let you guys know that right now. Back over to the lightweight division, we have Jacoby Jones taking on Daniel James Allen. Now this fight, this is really a tough fight to put your finger on. I'll tell you guys why. First and foremost, Daniel James Allen, he has that wrestling background. He's been training over with AKA for some time. He's very inactive. I mean, his last fight was 5 months ago, but before that, his second to last fight was almost 3 years ago. This isn't a fighter that has been extremely active and doesn't have a lot of fights under his belt, just 4 professional fights. With the limited tape you could pull up on him, he obviously favors his wrestling. But we take a look over at Jacoby Jones. I think this is a fighter that he can wrestle as well. He has some grappling skills. I'll tell you this much though. I've been seeing a lot of you guys high in this dude Jacoby Jones here, and I don't see it. I break down tape on him. I think he's very sloppy. Now he does have some athleticism. He has some power. I mean, you could see that raw ability he has. But I think that he's lacking from a technical standpoint, and I just think that there's some holes in his game, and I think that eventually you're going to see that exploited. We saw that in his one loss. It was only a year and a half ago where he got caught in that armbar submission against Austin Worms, which you could pull that fight up on YouTube. He made a mistake there. But even in some of his recent victories, even in some of these fights where he's had, these finishes, you could pull up a lot of these fights on YouTube. You pull up that last fight against Jean-Paul Lebesiani. He's very, very wide with his boxing, very wide. He throws all his shots from way out east and west. And, that could potentially cost him eventually. I could see him getting caught with a counter shot by somebody. I don't know if Daniel James Allen is that guy. Again, we haven't seen too much from him as far as the striking goes, that's for sure. And that's why I say there's some real asterisks and question marks going into this fight. I do believe that Jacoby Jones' game, you could see the gameness in him, and he's a guy that's confident. He's going to go out there and look to bring the fight. I do like that aspect of it, but I think from the limited tape I could pull up on Daniel James Allen, he's that type of dude as well, man. In those 4 fights that he's won out there, uses wrestling to dominate. There's an X factor that he can go out there and have a lot of success with his wrestling, even though Jacoby Jones is shown to be a pretty good grappler himself. He has good takedown defense, but Daniel James Allen, he has the USA tattoo. He's been training over at AKA. He's going to be pretty sharp there. There's some question marks in regards to the activity and the growth that we'll see from Daniel James Allen. He's 31 years old now. You guys know I can't sit here on the mic and just throw all these favorites your guys' way. And if I see some value on a dog, even though it's a very wide line, I'll still say I got Daniel James Allen taking this fight. I think it's just a very likely possibility that he goes out there and this is a very, very competitive fight. And there's just so many X factors out there that I think that maybe we see this fight kick off and we say, we all say, hey, this is what Dana White's Contender Series is all about. We always see that one fight on the card or 2 fights on the card that we see these dogs go out there and show up. And Jacoby Jones has a lot of holes in his game. If he hasn't been sharpening them up, then I think he could be in trouble. I will say this, though. He's only 27 years old, training at a Factory X. Obviously, I think that we could see a lot of growth in his game as well. And he does have some potential. He has some good attributes to that he has for his base, that he can continue to work on other things. And we can see him be a solid fighter. But he's very wild with the striking. He's lacking defensively in a couple different ways. And we'll take a shot on the dog here, Daniel James Allen, who's going to be a little bit of the more naturally larger fighter as well. At least he's a more rangy fighter. He has a good frame. He's 6'1". I'm curious to see how his striking looks in this fight, but we will take a shot on him there. So let's pull up the line over at Bet Rivers, where he is a plus 245 dog. I'm surprised to see that line there. I don't know why you guys are all so high on Jacoby Jones. He is as high as a minus 375 on Bet Rivers. I think that's a very high line. He very well may go out there and take this fight and just be, he might be he might show to be a very promising fighter, and we say, oh man, he was definitely the fighter to be on. But I need to see it. You know what? I need to see it. I'm not going to pick this big heavy favorite. I know a lot of you guys get bored with those big heavy favorite type of picks on these shows, and I think that Allen is a live dog here, so that's my pick. Without a doubt, the most intriguing matchup on this card, 2 undefeated heavyweight prospects, Shamil Gaziev taking on Greg Velasco. Shamil Gaziev, let's talk about him first and foremost, fighting out of KHK MMA, which you guys know. You got guys like Islam, working with them over there. The founder, Khalid bin Hamed Al Khalifa, he's the founder over there. And, you got guys like Muhammad Makayev working with them and whatnot. And Shamil Gaziev, he has the potential to really put them on the map, in my opinion. This is a guy, he's a mammoth of a man, big old heavyweight fighter. He's extremely tough. This is a guy, you take a look, I think it was his last fight, right, against Darko Stojic. He gets dropped with a big shot early on in that fight, and then, works his way into eventually getting the finish there. He's extremely tough. He was talking crap throughout that fight as long as it lasted. You got to love that type of energy. I get a lot of Tyson Fury vibes from him. He's not necessarily the most ripped type of guy, but just understand that with the size and the movement, he's a real athlete for his size. This is a legit fighter, man. You see the hand speed there. He has potential to go out there and crack, and he could definitely wrestle. He could use his size and wrestling to get on top of guys and really smash them out like that as well. So he's a well-rounded fighter. He is a fighter that I could definitely see getting starched when it doesn't go right for him. Like I said, Stojic put him down for a second, but the toughness to get right back up and get the finish himself shows the type of willpower he has. I'm very excited to see him work his way into the UFC. I think there's some fun matchups to make for him. And then we talk about his opponent, Greg Velasco, the Viking King. This is a fighter that I feel has taken advantage of a lot of his opponents that were lacking with their takedown defense. Greg Velasco will close the distance on you. He's very thick. And he has a low center of gravity. He works nice inside leg trips. I mean, he'll get a hold of you in the clinch, and he'll slip a leg in there and get you down on your back, and he'll work you. 6-0 all over at CFFC, and he's been finishing a lot of his opposition. You take a look at the level of competition, not necessarily overwhelming. You go look at the Kevin Spears decision victory, coming off a victory over Ronald Coleman, not to be confused with the late great Ronnie Coleman. That's not Ronnie Coleman there, which I believe Ronnie Coleman's like in a wheelchair these days, so that would have been brutal if they wheeled him out and fed him to Greg there. But again, Greg Velasco, as far as the striking goes, he seems to be. He's like one of those guys, like he's competent there. You see the movement and whatnot. There's not a lot of speed and pop from what I'm seeing, but it's still the heavyweight division. He's a big dude. And yeah, if he touches your chin, you guys know what time it is. It's the heavyweight division. And there is a potential that he can crack on the feet as well and get that knockout. But I wouldn't say that I've been overly impressed with the tape that I pulled up on him in the feet. This isn't a guy that's going out there with slick head movement and just, starching dudes. This is a guy that's really used his wrestling skills, his grappling skills, and his size to get a lot of W's. And I think that could be a little bit of a problem for him here because Shamil Gaziev is probably the more naturally larger fighter. They're built differently. Gaziev is built a little bit more upwards. Both guys weighing around the same weight, but Gaziev is just, he's a mammoth of a man. And I got to side with Gaziev here. I think this guy has some real X factors. Like I said, we talked about that Tyson Fury type of style with the confidence. He'll go out there, he'll talk some crap. He's well-rounded. Maybe he gets hit with the big shot, but still marches forward. And eventually, he pushes the pace on Velasco. And, Velasco is a guy that's been bullying a lot of guys. And I don't know how Velasco is going to act when he has a bully like Gaziev in front of him and starts to give him, some pressure back. So yes, I will be on Shamil Gaziev. I think this is a fighter that will be in the UFC for some time to come, and I think that Velasco has that type of potential too. So we'll see what's next for him, and we'll see how the fight plays out. Gaziev is a minus 450 favorite on BetMGM. He's as high as a minus 590 on BetRivers. Okay, I'm not crazy about any of these types of lines. I know some of you guys get on me. You say, oh, you don't like any lines. I mean, listen, if you guys want, at least try to get him in the minus 400s. Throw him in a parlay if that's what you like. Maybe you want to look for him to get the finish. I think maybe that's the route you go, but you got to be careful there too, man. Velasco's built like an ox. He seems to be pretty durable and seems to be decently technically sound, even defensively. He might be able to avoid the finish, and it might be like a grueling heavyweight type of affair. So be careful there. I'm not really crazy about betting on this fight. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it and see which one of these heavyweight prospects builds a name for themselves off this fight. I hope both of them do. I hope both of them have a really good fight, and we see both of them get contracts. I would love to see that. The heavyweight division is always a lacking division. We need more guys that can fight on these UFC cards. So with Shamil Gaziev, he has very, very long arms. He has a crazy reach. I think he'll land some big shots, and he'll just be the bully in there. You got two bullies squaring off, but I think Gaziev will be the real bully. He'll be the bigger bully when they face off. So give me Gaziev, and don't be surprised if we see a decision victory in a big heavyweight main event fight. And we'll see. I think the fight will deliver, though. It'll be a fun fight. Gaziev will bring it, but Velasco may prove to be durable. So that's how I'm going there. All right, guys. That's going to wrap up UFC Dana White's Contender Series Week 7. You guys know I love this show. It's taking place tomorrow night. If you guys want to keep up with me, catch me on Instagram. I'll be watching the fights. I'll try to get on the story and whatnot. Maybe I'll go live on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _. I'll be tweeting about it as well at the MMA Teller. Appreciate you guys. Subscribe, like this video, and again, subscribe for plenty more UFC and MMA betting content coming your guys' way. All right, guys, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA Fortune Teller. Yeah.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The teller.